What's good with YouTube? You already know. Big Flocka with a convict reaction where we smash, dash, and react. Please hit the like, subscribe, comment, man. Do all those things to help support this channel, man. And we got a special one for you guys today, man. And this is going to be interesting because I'm going to react to American Cholo's interview with an individual named Silent 200 from Vallejo Bay, Recon, in Upstate Sureno. And I thought it was a fucking excellent interview. I think if you're not too familiarized as far as with the Upstate Sureno's current plight, you know what I'm saying? It's really, it hits every fucking nail, man. And there's a lot of things where that American Cholo ran this interview fucking, I was impressed, to put it that way. You know what I mean? There's only one thing I have a disagreement with that I agree with Silent 200, right? And that is the down south Sureños will never understand an upstate Sureno struggle. Okay. I compare the upstate Sureno struggle, right, to that of the Norteño struggle behind the wall in the 80s and 90s, where they were outnumbered by the Sureños big time on every fucking prison yard. And there was a lot of times they were trying to dictate the Norteños programs, and the Norteños had to fight for theirs back in those days. This is the same thing that the upstate Sureños experienced. Now, Silent 200, I don't think he's too old, so he didn't have to go through the ones that were out there in the 80s and 90s, like during Weddle from Eastside Malitos, right, from Story King. His age bracket, right, the Sureños upstate were getting the blues, man, and there's no other way to look at it, man. And he even said it, for every 20, 30 of them, there's maybe 2 or 3 that were down, and that's how it was, man. So the ones that were out there pushing that agenda for them to exist out in the streets had to go through a lot of fucking different shit out there, man. Whereas, you know, this down south Sureños, yeah, gang banging is tough. Every day you get shot at, stabbed, and whatnot, but you still got homeboys that got your back. Whereas back in those days, a lot of the upstate Sureños were not with that action. You know what I'm saying? There was those that were. Don't get me wrong. There were some hoods that were sick with it, but for the most part, if you're from Northern California, particularly where I'm from, this is how it was back in the days. You know what I'm saying? Now, I can't speak for all the other different areas, but San Jose, Milpitas, all those surrounding areas, man, the Sureños were really not relevant, man. So if you were a Sureno, you would get jumped every day. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times they would go to school and there would be no Sureños at the school they were going to. They would quit going. That was just a natural reaction because they would start to move into certain neighborhoods and there'd be no other existing Sureños. As soon as you go to school back then, you're going to get smashed on. You know what I'm saying? So every day they had it bad. So I don't think down south Sureno would understand what the upstate Surenos gone through. Just like nobody could understand what the Norteños went through behind the walls. The Bulldogs can understand it because a lot of their older homeboys were part of that. And they're going through the same thing every time they get put out there in a line with Southsiders and Norteños. They're getting rushed. All that's pretty much is about the same as far as what I'm looking at. Now they're homegrown. You know what I mean? You know, the stats from north to south, as far as population wise, I'd say somewhere between 65 to 35%, maybe. You know, that's what I'm going to sit there and estimate. But in any event, they're not as far as focused about fucking gang banging as much. It's more about the rap gang. It's more about getting money. It's more about getting their hustle on. So there's a lot less violence that occurs. Now, don't get it twisted. You know what I'm saying? All it takes is fucking one weekend party or fucking one kitchen one in traffic and a mean bug and shit can get cracking, right? But the gang banging lifestyle is pretty much it's slowly deteriorated. It's not the focal point of a young aspiring Norteño. Nowadays they're being taught to fucking focus on making money and generate and run the neighborhoods, which is extremely different. And it's why you have all these neighborhoods from up north and down south and everybody able to coexist in the state because they're all on that same agenda, man. Before we were fighting each other with no reason. Now, because traditionally there's been war and get out, right? You know, you're still gonna have animosity. There's still gonna be fun kicking off, but the videos are not like they were 30 years ago when it was all about gang banging. You know, same thing could be said about those from down south. You know, their whole lifestyle was all about gang banging. It was less about fucking taxing individuals or doing the MA's bidding. Most individuals rather represent their hood as opposed to suit. The same thing could be said about Norteños in the 90s. They were more worried about banging their hood and set tripping on other varios as opposed to going at it with any upstate Sureños. And then everything started to evolve in a different fashion. You know, the hitters were getting locked up and stuff and catching long time cases. Everybody started focusing about generating money, and then nobody cared. Next thing you know, you got homegrown Sureños that are there, and they're not going anywhere. You know, so when Silent said that to Gil, I respected that because he's keeping it 100, man. Just like a Sureno could never understand what we went through when we hit these yards and we were outnumbered fucking 10, 15 to 1. You could never understand what an upstate Sureno had going against them when it was 90% Norteños and maybe 10% Sureños. And those Sureños that were out there were pretty much plasticos back in the days. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them were. Now, out of respect for the upstate Sureños during that era, there was some that were hitters. There was some that were riders. And that's why they're able to exist as they do today. You know what I'm saying? They moved into certain areas and were able to set up shop to where you had individuals that were being born into these neighborhoods that naturally became Sureños because it's where they grew up. You know, you can't, people, places, and things are going to dictate who you are, what you represent. You know, you can't fault that you grew up in a Sureño neighborhood, even though you may have family that are all Norteños, you're going to gravitate towards the homeboys that are there. Unless your uncles and cousins take a fucking strong lead in giving you schooling, you're going to rebuke all that and rock with your homies. And that's why you have so many individuals that you have Norteños and Sureños that are brothers and sisters, believe it or not, out in the streets. Sorteño from Palmas, his sisters were Sureñas. You know what I'm saying? He used to tell me that all the time. You know what I'm saying? He used to say, hey, they come through and we start clapping. You know, and that's just the life that everybody lived. You know, but I think Gil from America Cholo made some key points about, you know, down south, there's been more blue on blue bloodshed than anything else, which is true. You know what I'm saying? And eventually everybody got to get past it. It takes slow steps. It's not going to happen overnight. And I respect what Gil said, that there's some Northerners that say, well, we're not tripping off the downstaters, but the upstaters we're tripping off of. That's the ego that everybody has. Because I'm going to keep it 100. A lot of people have animosity that Sureños from down south, or not down south, Sureños established hoods up north, and that they're there to stay. That was the whole purpose when I was a youngster, was to move on any south side hood to try to get them to stop banging because it was Northern California. That's what it all came down to as kids. And if we weren't fucking with that, we were fucking with other homeboys. So you're always going to need an opposition. You're always going to need an enemy, because that's how gangs exist. You know, so that's why now you're starting to see different factions go against different groups and different races, because it changes the element. It's no longer a fucking north on south raza thing. It becomes more of a raza thing together. Anyways, I thought this video was pretty good. I'm not going to elaborate too much, man. This is just my opinion, man. You know, I think that dude Silent 200 kept it 100. I think he gave a good interview, and we'll see what comes next. With that said, it's your boy Flaco, Convicts Reaction. I'm out.